Hello everybody, I'm Ajit K. Mishra, your course instructor for Essential Life Skills. I'm here again with an important session on some other aspects of critical thinking. If you remember, in my last session I talked about certain critical aspects of critical thinking. In this session, I'll be walking you through the world of critical thinking at work, and how critical thinking plays a very, very important role in our professional lives. Before I do so, let's start with certain questions which we can ask ourselves to check whether we are the critical thinking type or not. How do we assess our critical thinking skills? So, the first question may be, am I the problem solving type? Do I believe in solving problems, or do I believe in finding the problems only? There are two types of people. Type 1, they believe in finding the problems. They're very, very good at problem finding. They can find problems with anybody and with anything. You just give them the task, they will do it honestly, absolutely honestly. We humans are very, very good at finding problems with others, with things, everywhere. There are the other type of people who are not the problem finding type, they are the problem solving type. They believe in solving problems, they find problems, but at the same time they begin to think about finding a solution to that problem, and they do so. They are the ones who are important. If I ask this question to myself, am I the problem solving type? If the answer is yes, then I can say I have good critical thinking skills, core critical thinking skills. The second is, am I curious and interested in learning more? Or do I believe in putting my learning to rest? For example, there are occasions when people say, I have studied a lot, I have passed all these examinations, I cannot read anymore, I cannot learn anymore. By saying this, they're actually hitting a nail in their coffin. That means they're going to fossilize. They cannot go beyond a certain point, they will be stuck. This is not at all a good idea. Learning is an ongoing process. It is an ever-evolving process. So if I answer by saying yes to this question, am I curious and interested in learning more? Then I know I have good critical thinking skills. Can I see connections between two different pieces of information and point to a trend or observation? That means when I look at two different pieces of information, can I find any similarities or differences? Can I see any pattern, any structure? That means, can I go beyond the information level only? If I say yes, I have good critical thinking skills. Am I open-minded when it comes to listening? Do I eagerly listen to different perspectives? Am I open-minded? Am I flexible? Am I eager when it comes to listening to other perspectives? If the answer is yes, I have good critical thinking skills. Am I self-reflective in examining my own biases and prejudices? No person can claim not to have prejudices and biases. We all have our likes and dislikes, biases and prejudices. But do we reflect on those prejudices and biases to verify whether it's right to continue with this or not? If my answer is yes, I reflect in examining my own biases and prejudices, then I have good critical thinking skills. So for all professionals, it's very important that we verify, we check whether we have the right kind of critical thinking skills in us or not before we go to our workplace. Critical thinking is especially important when it comes to the workplace because it plays a very important role in 3 areas of business. The first is leadership. Leaders are required to be very, very good at critical thinking because they have to make a lot of decisions which ultimately impact the business. They need to employ critical thinking skills when considering situations and weighing up the advantages and disadvantages of possible solutions. That's how critical thinking skills plays a very important role when it comes to leadership. The next important thing is problem solving. Without critical thinking skills, it will be very, very difficult to solve a problem because problems arise within all organizations every day. No organization is problem-free organization. No one can claim that. They have problems. That's not a big deal. The real issue is whether they are ready to overcome those problems, address those problems systematically, properly, critically. That's important. So, some of these problems have a straightforward solution, whereas some other problems require a more complex and more dedicated approach, critical approach. And that's exactly where we need critical thinking skills. The third is critical thinking skills help us enhance our communication. It may sound a little, bizarre, but that's true. Critical thinking helps us improve our communication skills because there is a strong link between critical thinking and communication. One important aspect of communication is to build rapport. And how do we do that? By building integrity, credibility, acceptability and agreeability. Critical thinking helps us with that because it allows us to consider the perspectives of others, anticipate how they might respond and formulate the most appropriate response. So, when we combine critical thinking with our communication, we are very, very accurate, to the point, and with such accuracy and to the point communication, we can always enhance the productivity of any organization. So that's why it plays a very important role in enhancing communication. Let's take a look at some other aspects of critical thinking skills in the workplace. How do we improve our critical thinking skills in the workplace? The first thing that we can do is to ask questions. Questioning is very, very essential. If we want to improve or perfect our critical thinking skills, we must learn the art of questioning and even the science of it. When presented with a problem, which we generally receive in the form of a project, a task, we must know how to frame the right kind of questions because questions contain in themselves the answers. So if a person knows how to create a set of questions, the person has already found the answers. So we must know that questions contain answers in them. So questioning is a great way to learn more about a situation and help expand how we think about things. Therefore, it's a very important approach with which we can improve our critical thinking skills. The second one is research. Research skills are very, very important. It's not meant for academics only. It's meant for everyone because we live in the era of information overflooding. So without adequate research skills, it's going to be extremely difficult. We'll be lost in the labyrinth of information, and we'll end up believing or consuming the wrong kind of information all the times. So it's very important that we develop the right kind of research skills. We need to test the validity, verify, evaluate, assess the validity of arguments, information with the help of our research skills. The next important approach is to consider the source. It's very, very important. These days we just use a search engine. Google is one of the most popular search engine. We just Google text and then we get the information and we take that information and consume it, thinking as if we have received the right kind of information, but that's not the fact most often. We must develop the skill to verify the source of that information, whether that information is based on some study, on some research, on some authentic findings is very, very important. So it pays to uncover the source of information because it helps us understand the motivation and the perspectives behind it, whether it is an authentic and a credible research study or just a misleading piece of information. So that's very, very important, and this ability will help us with that. We can now go for a quick study. The problem is, if eating chocolate is good for us, if we start with this problem, what can we do about it? We'll first run to Google to find out whether eating chocolate is good for us or not. When we go to Google, we may type in reasons to eat chocolate, and then we find a lot of responses, and we begin to gather the responses. You can note down the important responses that you come across. If you're also verifying the resources at hand, and if also verifying the sources from where these resources come, it'll be good. So you are noting down. And then you go and type in reasons not to eat chocolate. You'll find some other responses, you note them down too. Now, it may happen that you have some highly conflicting information. There may be some information that tell you that eating chocolate is good for your heart, your brain, your mind. On the other hand, there may be some other information that may tell you that it is not at all good for your heart or your brain. Some sources might tell you that it is good when it comes to reducing anxiety and even depression. Some others might tell you that it will add to your depression and anxiety. So how do you reconcile these contradictory claims? You are in a fix now. You can do so by thinking critically. So what do? Now you go and try to find out the right kind of arguments on the basis of some authentic studies or research that have been conducted into these questions, these problems. And then you can go through those findings and then prepare your final conclusion on the basis of those findings. You can do so with the help of some good critical thinking. And imagine how all major organizations, business houses are thriving. They are thriving on the basis of some of these great critical thinking skills. And that's the reason why the entire industry values critical thinking so much. That brings us to the end of this session. I'm sure you have taken note of the important critical thinking skills, its components, its processes, its techniques that I talked about. And you're going to explore these skills yet further so that you become very, very good at your critical thinking skills. Remember, creative thinking and critical thinking together form a lethal combination. So we all need to develop both of them in us. I'll join you with a new session the next time. Until then,